Welcome to yet another episode of Shortcast Over Coffee. Today, my guest is Parth MN. Parth is an independent journalist based in Mumbai. He mainly covers rural India for multiple publications. His work has appeared in the LA Times, the Washington Post, Al Jazeera, People's Archive of Rural India, or PARI, Times of India Digital, among many other outlets. He is also the recipient of Indian Express Group's Ramnath Goenka Award, as well as European Commission's Lorenzo Natali Media Prize. Quoting the legendary rural reporter P. Sainath, on an average, a national daily gives 0.67% of its front page news to the news of rural origin, when 69% of the country's population lives there. Pretty much sums up the state of rural reporting in India. So, in this episode, I thought I will talk to Parth about his experience reporting in Vidharbha and Manipur, lessons he learned, and also about the state of press freedom in India, among many, many other things. So let's dive right into it. Hi, Parth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Parth, I see that you are an independent journalist, pretty much a freelancer at this point. Walk me through your journey. Where did you grow up? Are you a Mumbaiker out and out? And did you always have a passion in journalism?
Well, I'm born and raised in Mumbai, so yes, out and out Mumbai. I didn't always have that passion about journalism. In fact, I was playing cricket in Mumbai until I was 19 or 20. I played at a decent level, under 17, under 19 in Mumbai. And at about 2021, I wasn't where I should have been. So I thought I should do something else. But when I played cricket, I played with some really good players. I played with Ranji Trophy players, first class cricketers. Actually, I've played with Shardul Thakur and Surya Yadav as well. So, uh, but at 2021, I wasn't exactly making it, or wasn't where I should have been. So I quit, and I wanted to be a sports journalist initially because I thought that being having played a fair bit of cricket in Mumbai, I could write about cricket maybe a bit better than some others who haven't had the experience of playing professional cricket. But I wasn't too pleased with how sports journalism was happening in India back then. It was more about PR. It was uh, you know it was all about I think social media was also sort of proliferating around that time, and uh, I felt like I don't want to waste my time running behind people who are not interested in talking to me. So around the same time, I was reading P. Sainath's book, Everybody Loves a Good Drought, which is about rural India and speaks about social inequalities, uh, you know, uh, marginalized communities, and so on and so forth. So that book was a big inspiration, and I thought I should do something like that, where I'm going out reporting on stories that uh, not many seem to be keen on. Uh, so that's where the journey sort of started. That's where I thought I should become a journalist and report on serious stuff and write about stories, write about people who do not make it to your mainstream media. So sort of that's when it all started.
Hmm. So you were aware of P. Sainath's work from the Hindu at all, or
Yeah,
because
yeah. So
yeah, because North India, I mean, at least Bombay does not have that much of proliferation of Hindu as much as say a Chennai or a Hyderabad. I got to know of Sainath from Hindu. I mean, I was an avid reader. Every day I used to read almost every single page, pretty much, and Sainath's articles were quite an inspiration. Inspiration in the sense that how he would go out of his way to cover some of the, like you said, not so heard of stories, and it was interesting in the sense that if you are living in a middle class community, so you're sort of living in a cocoon, right? You are interacting with people that are of the same income group, and so on, and these articles sort of widened your view about what rural India is like, and how life is like in rural India. So that's why I was like, did you got to know him through the Hindu as well, and or just the book?
Well, I always knew of P. Sainath because also my father's a journalist, my mother's a film critic. So there was a lot of, that in my upbringing because I even now, we have a lot of books in my house. And even though I didn't read a lot as while growing up, I always knew what to pick up, what not to pick up. My father would always sort of tell me to read Ramchandra Dua, read P. Sainath, read this and that. My mother always was a huge she was a film critic, so she would introduce me towards cinema. Uh, I think I was fairly young. The first foreign film that I saw was Bicycle Thief, and so that was always part of the family. I mean, reading books, fiction, non-fiction, cinema, sports. My parents always encouraged me to sort of engage with that. So I was always aware of Sainath, but I started reading. But I picked up his book around the time I realized I don't want to be a sports person, or I can't be a sports person rather, and I should do something else. And when I was transitioning sort of from aspiring sports journalist to an aspiring uh, not a sports journalist, that's when I picked up Sainath's book and thought that this is something I should do.
Hmm. Interesting you mentioned about your dad and mom. Very unconventional profession. I mean, I'm sure, when they were choosing their professions, it was way more unconventional than it is now. Tell me more about what your dad did and what your mom did. Was it all in the print media?
Yeah. So initially, when I was so they started a magazine, then they started a daily paper in Mumbai, which was one of the biggest papers in Mumbai at the time in the 90s. Biggest in a sense, not in terms of money, but in terms of the magnitude of work it did, especially because in 1991, 92, I was born in 91, and 92, 93, you had the bomb blasts and riots in Mumbai. So my father and my parents basically started a publishing house in the 80s. They started a magazine. Then in 1989, they started a newspaper in Mumbai. It was one of the major newspapers at the time, not in terms of money or in terms of resources. Actually, they had very little resources, and but the work they did was extremely significant in the 90s, because in 1992 and 93, Mumbai saw those bomb blasts, and then the riots happened. And Bal Thackeray's role, nobody had called out the way my father did. So I remember during the 90s, I was we used to get these phone calls of threats uh, and abuses. So actually, we were being told. So my parents were being told long before social media existed. There were these attempts to burn down my father's office. Uh, I remember one time I was very little, and my the car that we were traveling in was stoned. So things like that used to happen. There was always a police van stationed outside our house because there was always a threat to his life. I, if I'm not wrong, until 96, 97, I used to go to the school. I mean, in junior KG and senior KG, I used to uh, go to the school with a couple of policemen as protection, because there was a threat to my life as well. Because the callers had sort of told my parents that we know where your son studies, and things like that. If you don't back off, if you don't stop writing what you're writing, you may not see him again. So my parents had categorically told my teachers in junior KG and senior KG that don't trust him with anybody else. If someone says I've come to pick up Parth, don't let him go. Only trust him if the two of us come to pick him up. Or we had a driver back then who was like who was with us for a very long time. So he used to pick me up, or my parents used to pick me up. A fourth person was just not allowed to pick me up from school, because it was quite dangerous at the time. So that was the atmosphere sort of that I grew up in. So it was always quite intense at home. Um, So the paper's name was Mahanagar, and my mother's name is Meena Karnik. My father's name is Nikhil Vagai. Uh, Both of them ran that paper for a while, for about 20 years, until they couldn't run it anymore. In 2007 or 8, my father was the editor-in-chief of IBN Lokmat. He became the editor-in-chief of IBN Lokmat when Rajdeep Sardesai wanted to start a Marathi channel uh, with the CNN IBN group. So he became the editor-in-chief, and that went on for another 8 years. And then for the past 8 years, I think my father quit after Narendra Modi came to power, and uh, Ambani took over the network 18 group, which is when Rajdeep also resigned, my father also resigned. And since then, he's been doing his own thing. And I also sort of became a journalist in 2014. So actually, my career as a journalist and Narendra Modi's career as Prime Minister sort of started together, fortunately or unfortunately. Uh, I frankly didn't want to be a journalist until I was 2021, but that upbringing, it was journalism, being aware of what's happening around you, books, culture, movies, sports. It was always part of my upbringing. I was always encouraged to sort of engage with that. I don't remember my parents ever asking me to not go and play, to not watch movies, to study more because you're wasting time watching films. That kind of thing never happened. They always believed in showing me. I mean, I remember seeing some great films, world cinema, Polish films, even Hollywood classics, Bollywood classics. My parents would sort of encourage me to do that. So yeah, I had a pretty fun childhood.
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, I can totally, remember the times. I mean, I don't remember it very vividly, but at least from documentaries and movies and reading articles about it, how times were like in Bombay in the early 90s, lot more influence of Dawood and the underworld and and I mean, there were so many scams as well, stock
Yeah,
market
I remember.
scam.
I remember one day, one evening. I think my father had written something about Chota Rajan, and I don't think my father had written, but the paper had carried something. And in the evening, his men had called, and they were like, "Agle ko bolo humko phone karne ke." So I remember being very scared at the time, uh, but thankfully nothing happened.
Wow. As a family, as a press or publication house, would you call it more left leaning?
Yeah, left to the center there.
Interesting. Hmm. So you play cricket at a decent level. How was that experience like? Any hanky-panky experiences when it came to selection, or I mean, I
No,
think
none
you.
of that. I mean, I had a very good time in Mumbai as a cricketer, and even though I did not sort of materialize into a professional career, I sort of cherished those moments. I had a great time playing Maidan cricket in Bombay. Taking your kid back, taking you to a train, playing for your school, then your college, then club. I was in the probables of Mumbai under 17 team, played at a decent level, A division cricket, where all the, I mean, I remember playing against Wasim Jafar as well. So I had a great time playing cricket in Mumbai. Also, team sport just teaches you a lot of things. It sort of teaches you to enjoy each other's success, share each other's failures. It tells you how you can be down one moment, but you have to get past that. And similarly, even if you get 100, you can't sort of be on cloud nine for far too long, because then it basically teaches you to stay in the moment. And even though I did not become a full-time professional cricketer, I I had a great time, and I think I enjoyed every minute.
Yeah, I think you rightly said about sport. Like it teaches you so much about life, especially comebacks, right? People write you off, and then you still have that chance to prove yourself. And we have so many examples from history. I mean, Roger Federer is one. Saurav Ganguly. I can see a Roger Federer poster right behind you, and
Yeah, big fan.
I can also see from your tweets how big of a fan you are of his. I am
Yeah,
too, and
sports
who.
has, even though I have stopped playing cricket, but I've not stopped following sport. I mean, It's something that keeps me sane, I would say. I have uh, I stay up late to watch Roger Federer play. I mean, I was distraught when he retired, but it had to happen. I remember I was extremely upset when Ricky Ponting retired. I was a huge fan of Ponting while growing up.
I see your Twitter
I loved
handle
the
is
entire.
Parth Punter. Uh,
Yeah, Punter
I,
is Ponting's nickname.
yeah, of course. I mean, Ponting actually, when he was playing, he did not have a lot of fan following in India. I think it was.
I was one of the rare ones. I was one of he was one of those players people loved to hit. And I just couldn't get enough of him. I couldn't get enough of that arrogance, that aura, collar up, chest out. He was just chewing gum chabake. He was just brilliant to watch. And I loved it when he was batting, the way he played those pull shots on the front foot. I mean, I don't think I've seen a better side in cricket than that.
Yeah, I mean that must have been quite a rarity, But yeah, I mean, looking at the records, I think between 2002 to 2009, I think Ponting was just incredible. I think his record is second to none.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a joy to watch.
And
Uh,
let's not disregard fielding. What a
Oh,
fantastic fielder he
absolutely.
was.
He could. I remember I had gone to watch a practice session of Australia when they had come here. I don't exactly remember which year it was, but I was quite young. But I was always fascinated with the Australian team. So Ponting was obviously like my favorite player, but loved Shane Warne, loved Glenn McGrath, Adam Gilchrist, and all those players. So when they were here and they were playing a match at Wankhede, I had gone the day before to watch their practice session, and Ponting was doing his fielding drill where there was a stump, half a stump in the ground, and he was hitting that half a stump all the time when he was doing that fielding drill. He was that good with his direct hits. So I wasn't so when you see that, you're not at all surprised when he keeps hitting the stumps from point or from covers, because he's so used to doing that practice drill where he's just hitting half a stump all the time. It was just fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ponting and even Andrew Simons were one of these guys who used to hit the stumps all the time. I still remember, I think it was Robin Uthappa in the 2007 World Cup. There was a mix-up, and
Yeah,
Simons just waits that half a second, and he
yeah,
literally pegs the middle stump, and I mean,
yeah. Hit the
incredible
bullseye.
team. Yeah, I think 2000 and I mean that Australian team. Wow, what a team it was, and
Yeah, brilliant.
really world
You know
conquerors.
that there's that documentary of Michael Jordan with The Last Dance. Someone should make a similar documentary about Ponting and his invincibles around that time. It would be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Steve Waugh and then Ponting. Yeah. I mean, Steve Waugh has a 75% test win record. I mean, are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah. They've done that. Both Steve and Ponting have done that 16 wins in a row in Test cricket.
Yeah, quite incredible. Any fond memories from playing with Shardul Thakur and Surya Kumar Yadav? I mean, Shardul gets picked on by a lot of people. I mean, I've seen a few interviews where people speak really fondly of Shardul and his antics. But anything that you can remember from playing cricket with some?
Well, he was quick. I mean, he was quick. I don't think they would remember me now, but because obviously they are stars and not. But I remember playing against him with him. He was fast. I played against him. I faced him actually. I was a batsman, and he used to bowl the new ball. He was he was fast. He was one of the fastest bowlers. He was used to be quite wayward initially, but when he got it right, he was just lethal. And Surya, I've played with him in selection matches under 17 in the under 17 team. And one match I remember we had played at Matunga, where the boundary was short square of the wicket, but straight it was quite far.
Was it
And
the
he would hit
Gymkhana?
those. No, it was on the DPZ pitch.
Hmm.
So it was Matunga Gymkhana ka opposite end. So the straight boundary was quite far, and I remember Surya smoking those sixes straight over the bowler's head like it was child's play. He had when in that particular match he had got some 70 or 80, but I think he had hit some 5 or 6 sixes in that game. So it was quite incredible to watch him play and the ease with which he scored those runs.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope he comes into the Indian team for the World Cup. I think we are missing a thing or two. Maybe I think I was actually talking to Nitin Sundar, ex Cricinfo, and he also made it a point to mention that having Surya in the team would really bolster the batting lineup, X factor and whatnot.
So, I mean,
Well,
we have like so many options to be honest that it's always difficult to sort of someone's going to be left out. That's it.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, So Parth, you play cricket at a decent level, but was academia also going on the side? What did you major in? What college did you go to?
Academy, I said I wasn't too what do you say big on studies. I was a decent student. I did well in school, um, but I wasn't like पढ़ाई करके you have to get 90%, 95%. I was never that. My parents never asked me to be that, to be honest, which was very cool of them. Uh, but I was always big on playing cricket, playing sports. Whenever I did play cricket, I would play carom with friends and PlayStation with friends. And so I was always like an outgoing kid, spending a lot of time with friends. I studied when I wanted to or when I had to, basically, before the exams. I didn't even cut down on my sports, even when I was doing those SSC exams or whatever, 12th standard, 15th standard, which are supposed to be a big deal for other students. It wasn't that big a deal for me. Any, at least I don't remember making it a big deal. I studied sincerely. So, so, uh, so yeah, I mean, I was a decent student. I did well in studies, but it was always wanted to sort of play and be, you know, out and about. Then after graduation, I did a postgrad journalism course. I'm a commerce graduate. I took up commerce only because it would allow me to play more cricket. I have absolutely no uh, recollection of how I passed accounts. I don't remember how I got through any of that, to be honest. I was always out playing cricket, but I did somehow manage to get by. After I finished my after I graduated with BCom with a degree in BCom, got some 73, 74%. I think 77%. I was pretty happy with that. Uh, uh, I did a postgrad journalism course because that's when I decided that I want to be a journalist. And I did my postgrad from this place called Journalism Mentor, which is a private university. Not very many people knew about it, but it was quite an imaginative course. And two people called Shishir Joshi and Alok Thakur were the mentors over there, and they were really good. So I did that 18-month postgrad course with them. And after that, I started working as a journalist. So what had happened was I started writing for DNA Online. Catch News had just started. Uh, I I had started doing research for Shashank Bengali, who was the South Asia editor of Los Angeles Times. Shashank knew Shishir, and he had asked him if he knew someone who could do research from him, translations for him. So Shishir had recommended my name, and I started sort of working with Shashank as his research assistant or whatever, as a special correspondent. So I spent a lot of time working for him, translating and whatever. And I also told him that I'd like to do my own stories if that's possible. And he was very kind enough to sort of give me that chance because both of us sort of bonded over our mutual love for Roger Federer, and he 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 liked some of my story ideas, and uh, then we started working on story ideas, and I shared quite a few bylines with him. So I started writing for Los Angeles Times, and at the same time, the stories that did not work for Los Angeles Times, I would pitch to Indian publications, and that's how it sort of started. So I've always been an independent journalist, and it's been what 8, 9 years now. I've been working as an independent journalist. I've since then written for several publications, including Washington Post, Wired, which is the American tech magazine. Uh, I've written for The Guardian, I've written for Al Jazeera, and in India, my the stories that the place that I work for most regularly is the People's Archive of Rural India, which is Sainath's website. So I started working with him, which was like a when I started working for with P. Sainath, it was a huge deal for me because I had, as I said, his book had influenced me a great deal. So when I finally got the chance to work with him, it was amazing to get to know him, work with him closely. It was just wonderful. And to this date, I mean, very we very regularly talk about journalism, stories, general cricket. He's also a huge cricket buff. So it's something I've been very fortunate with.
Yeah, that's fantastic to be able to work with someone who inspired you in the first place. Must be a great feeling indeed. And I have to also accept that I had no idea about People's Archive of Rural India till you mentioned to me about it, and I'm not proud of it. So I got to know of Pari from our conversation previously, and I did look it up, and what amazing journalism. I can't believe I never heard about it till this point. And I'll definitely link Pari in the show notes so that people can go check it out. What
That would be
amazing
great.
stories you guys are bringing out. I mean, again, it's like Hindu was this one place destination for everything, right? And I know the whole color of print media has changed. I mean, writing has changed now. And so you get a newspaper and it would have everything from sports to tech news to, rural news to politics to everything. And now I feel like it's more compartmentalized. Yes, you do have these legacy media publishing houses having their own websites, but because it's more compartmentalized, you need to know where to look for, and that's probably one of the reasons why I never got to know about it. But what fantastic work! How did you decide on being a freelancer rather than be associated with a single publishing house?
So when I started working with LA Times, and I had this very sweet deal because of Shashank Bengali, where I could also freelance with other publications. I didn't feel the need to associate myself with one publication because I was writing for an international publication as well as Indian publications whenever I got the chance. And then in 2017, LA Times did some restructuring, and I think they shifted some of their resources from South Asia to East Asia, which is when I lost that LA Times thing. Shashank also moved to Singapore after that. But by then, I had written for these websites quite a lot that I would always get work. I mean, I constantly got work with First Post, and Pari was also obviously there. Because I had written for LA Times, I could branch out and pitch stories to other international publications. Started writing for Al Jazeera. So I thought I always, I never felt like taking up a full-time job because I would lose that opportunity to write for an international publication. And I would also be, I was also afraid that I would be stuck covering daily news, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to write from rural India. I wanted to do these detailed long form stories, which I get to do at Pari and also now at several other international publications. So uh, I I always felt like it gives me the liberty to sort of do the stories that I want to do, choose the stories that I want to do, and and travel as much as I could. So being a freelancer allowed me to travel a lot. In the last 8 9 years, I've traveled and reported from some 20 21 states. I don't think I would have had the opportunity maybe to do that if I had been working for somebody.
Wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think if you were working for a media house, you will also be constrained with, who owns the media house. Like you said, when Ambani started to own, your dad quit, and there may be a lot of chains put on you, right? So now you are quite unshackled. so to speak.
Yeah.
So, Parth, I mean, this is my first time talking to someone who has done rural India journalism or rural journalism. And it must be working so much differently, right? I mean, when I talk about, let's say, sports journalists, they have the backing of statistics, they have the backing of television. And when it comes to, say, a business journalist, they have data and they can track the stock market, they can track annual reports, quarterly reports, and whatnot. Reporting rural India is very different because the data is not as prevalent, and the quality of data also might not be as good, and it might involve a lot of ground reporting. So give me a sense of how rural journalism works. Do you travel and interview? Is that the major part of what you do?
Yeah, I think half the job is done when you get to a place. To be honest, rural India has so many stories, so many compelling stories that once you get there, it's the stories are basically staring back at you. It's very difficult to not come back to not come back with a story when you're traveling through the vast hinterlands of India. Yeah, so when traveling through rural India, I mean, to be honest, there is data, and you need data at the end of the day to make sure that you're portraying an issue that is prevalent, that gives a sense of the magnitude of the problem. But at the end of the day, I still feel it's about uh, stories of people, because those human interest stories are very important to me. And if you've seen Pari, you know how important they are for the podcast that we do. Uh, it, it can Data tells you how big a problem is, but human beings at the end of the day tell you how they felt when they went through that problem or when they lived through that problem. So I think both, when you combine the two, that's when you have a compelling story. You're always looking out for uh, data, which might be government reports, or it could be reports that the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, activists on the ground might have put together. They're all very useful. The idea is to know what is where and then cite the appropriate document to basically substantiate what you're trying to say. But when you're traveling through rural India, it's very difficult to not have any stories, to be honest, because the stories are so compelling that they are basically staring back at you. So I feel half the job is done when you travel to the right place and meet the right people. The rest of the story then just sort of writes itself. I feel some of the most powerful stories you get is when you have very good local contacts, local activists who might be working on that issue for years. So they know exactly what you're looking at, and they know exactly in which direction they could point you. And that's what I've always done. I've kept in touch with my sources on the ground, activists working on different issues like maternal health, education, child marriages, uh, and so on and so forth, agriculture. So it's always good to keep in touch with them. Sometimes they get in touch with you about what's happening. Sometimes you sort of reach out to them to ask if there's a story here. It's fun. It's fun to sort of travel and explore stories, meet people you would have otherwise never met, go to places you would have otherwise never visited, and travel and on other people's money. So it's a good life.
Yeah, interesting. And I was thinking about how a farmer or someone in the heartlands of India would feel when a journalist is coming to report their story, right? Some may also feel that here is a city dweller who has come here to make money off of us, wanting to write a story. We don't know if the story is going to make any difference in our, fundamental difference in our lives, because our lives has been the same. People have come and gone. People have reported. Politicians have come, asked for votes, and they have gone and not looked back at us. So you must have also faced some levels of hostility during your travel, or was it all very welcoming? How do people deal with a city dweller wanting to cover their story?
Well, I think what you should do as a reporter is just be honest about your job and what you want to do with their story. You shouldn't be making any false promises that if you write about them, somebody will help you or your lives will drastically change. There's no point in sort of getting into any of that. And I have always felt like if you're honest, I have always uh, experienced that when you're honest about your job, they're very welcoming. They want to talk about their problems. And I've sure there are farmers sometimes they say "Okay, we are not interested in talking to you, and you respect that. I mean that's fine, and you move on to somewhere. But most of the times, I mean that very rarely sometimes tells you to get lost. Most of the times I've been welcomed, and farmers have sort of uh, opened their homes, their hearts, and sat across the table and shared their stories. I also feel it happens. It gets a little easier when you have a contact who they trust. So if an activist in the region has been working in for a farmer or for on a particular issue for a long period of time, the farmers trust that activist, and when you go through that activist, the farmers automatically trust you. Uh, they know that this guy is not a fraud, basically. So
Hmm.
that's when they sort of open up. And also, when you're talking to them, you don't. I mean, at least what I do is I don't immediately ask them hard questions. I'll start off with uh, you know stories about. I'll start off with questions around uh, weather or how much people there are, how many people in the village, what crops do they have, and so on and so forth. And then maybe get into if there's been a suicide in the house, then talk about that, climate change, weather patterns, and so on and so forth. So how much loss that they might have incurred. You get into that after a bit, and that's when I think because a story can only be compelling when the farmers sort of open up and speak their hearts out, and for that you need to sort of give them time. Uh, I feel they might get conscious if you immediately start photographing them. It could they could they could be taken aback. But once they are at ease with you, once you've spent a couple of hours with them, that's when they open up. When farmers open up about agriculture, they speak about climate change. It's one of the most insightful conversations you'll ever have because they are the ones living through it. Sure, climate change it sounds like an academic topic, and there are these very sophisticated English-speaking people speaking in jargons. But when you speak to a farmer about climate change, they know exactly what they're talking about because they've lived through it, and I found those conversations most insightful.
Yeah, I think I'm sure that human connections and the trust that you build with people is very, very important in this aspect. I'm sure language also goes a long way. If you can speak the local language, that will go a long way. And like you mentioned, having a social activist who they trust, who has made a change in their lives, and it's all about gaining confidence, right? And I think it's something that you age like fine wine. The more you report, the more experience you have, I think the more they trust. And
Absolutely, and some of the farmers in Maharashtra, for example, they're on Facebook with me. They have my number. If there's something happening in their village, in their district, now they call me up and tell me, "Hey, look, you should look at this. This is a story here. This has happened. That has happened." So now I've sort of over the past 8 9 years, I've managed to sort of build contacts across uh, India, mostly central and North India. I haven't traveled much in South. I've traveled through Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. But again, as you said, the language barrier is a bit of a problem. So it gets difficult to form these long-term relationships in villages of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu because uh, you're not familiar with their language and they're not familiar with yours. But in Maharashtra or even in UP, for example, I've UP, Rajasthan, Gujarat, I've contacts uh, that are still in touch with me, even if I don't have a story from there. We're in touch, and it's that's how actually you get better as a reporter, because a reporter is only as good as his sources. That's what people say. So uh, you know, reporters are as good as their sources, and your job is to basically build your sources as you go along.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I was looking at some of your work that you have done for Pari, and one thing that one of your recent work was, I mean, really heartbreaking, to be honest. It was about farmers in Vidharbha, devastation caused due to cotton crops, mental health support being taken away after being assigned a psychologist. And I feel like, the farmer suicides in Vidarbha, I mean, people have been reporting it for years, and it's been sort of a perennial problem, kind of. And the mental health of farmers is probably not as spoken about, and we can all imagine the kind of things that they have gone through. And you also touched upon climate change and how it's affecting farmers. What have been some of the stories pertaining to climate change? I know we'll come to the mental health and suicide part later, but what have been some of the compelling stories that they have said about climate change and how it is affecting crops in India?
Yeah, so the story that you're referring to, it was an attempt to look at the mental health of farmers in times of climate change and agrarian crisis, because it's all interrelated, right? Climate change worsens the agrarian crisis has worsened, so farmers' mental health has worsened. It's all connected to each other. So the idea was to sort of uh, look at all three and tell that story through the lens of those who are suffering the most. Uh, for that, I mean, I went to the ministries and got some data which was not published before, and managed to, you know, look at how many mental health camps that have been held, how many people were found to have problems with their mental health, and then what happened after that. That was the whole point of looking at that story. And it turns out the state government of Maharashtra hasn't spent a lot of money. I think they've spent only 8% of their budget in uh, in the past 2 years, 3 years, which is quite appalling. I mean, I think uh, it is one of the most important things happening in the country right now or in the world. Climate change is here, and uh, farmers are sort of living through it every day. And how it works basically is that whatever the farmers have learned over a period of their lifetime, it's it's all gone down the drain. They cannot. So they've always known uh, that so once the first couple of showers happen in the mid July, they would start planting seeds. They would start sowing processes. They would start the sowing process, and then as as the as the monsoon progresses, you do what you should with with time. Now, with climate change, there are the weather patterns are completely unpredictable. The first showers happen, and then there's a 45-day dry spell, which completely ruins whatever you have planted. Then you have to plant again. When the showers happen, it's like a cloud burst, so there's excess rainfall that completely drowns the farmland. So the only thing that the farmers have known and they were experts in, uh, a farmer basically told me that this is the only thing we have known, and now we don't know that as well. So it's very disorienting, because you know this farmer who I was speaking to, he said that I haven't studied much, I don't know a lot of things, but one thing I've always known, one thing I've always felt like this was my area, was agriculture, because that's what I've done all my life. And now, after like doing it for 40 years, I feel I don't know this. I don't know what to do about it. The weather has completely thrown me off. So how do I reconcile with the fact that the one thing that I knew all my life is something that that is letting me down? So So that is a huge problem, and there's a huge gap in addressing that anxiety and tension, and which leads eventually to depression among farmers. There's very little intervention, especially in rural areas, when it comes to handling farmers' mental health.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that how expensive mental health and hiring a psychologist can be. And so what have been some of the measures that the government has taken in this regard, assigning psychologists to tackle the
So there,
problems with?
there are district mental health programs in each state, in each district of the state. But the staff, but they're short staffed, so they're supposed to sort of reach out to people. And mental health, you can't figure it out overnight, right? It has to be a recurring process. Now, if a farmer has to travel an hour and a half to get to a psychologist or a therapist, you're basically discouraging them from getting a recurring treatment. And that's exactly what has happened. There are these mental health camps. Sometimes many farmers I met, they didn't even know that there was the district mental health program in place, and the program has been conducting mental health camps to identify people with mental health issues.
How do they
Many farmers
react?
hadn't come across.
How do they react to something like mental health? Obviously the awareness is quite low in India, and I'm sure it's lower in that strata of the society. So when someone says that, hey, I'm a psychologist, I'm here to deal with your problems, how do they react? Are they aware that they have an issue and this needs to be addressed?
When I spoke to therapists who have worked in rural India, they've said that people have been very open to it. If you uh, approach them with a warmth and welcoming feel. Uh, but the problem is not enough people have been approached. That's the gap. So the district mental health program lacks in reaching out to the last person on the ground because of its underfunding, because it is underfunded, and even the funding that is there is not being has not been utilized. So there is this. So there are these mental health camps that have happened, and people have, and through those camps, farmers, laborers, people in rural India at large have have been identified uh, as people who have had, who are in distress, who need help. But then nothing happens after that. There is no follow up because you have to reach where the people are. You can't expect people to come to you. That's the whole point, and that is not happening. That is the big problem.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned about climate change, it's so true, right? I mean, that is the one thing that they have learned through generations, and I'm pretty sure their parents were farmers, and they also learned a thing or two about climate and when to sow, when to reap over the years, and now everything is off the radar. That's
Yeah. So when it rains a lot. When it doesn't, it just doesn't rain at all. How do you prepare for that kind of a weather, right? So it's just it, it's just completely thrown all their calculations off, and more often than not, it leads to a cycle of losses, and losses then lead to a cycle of debt, which sort of keeps piling with every season, and then there's eventually a breaking point.
so climate change is the first and sort of the primary reason behind these deaths, because it could be something else as well, like
It's a
farmers
lot
not
of
getting
things.
a
I
fair
mean,
price. um,
there's a lot of things. Climate change is just one part of it, and it has exacerbated the agrarian crisis. But the farm crisis dates back to, years. Sainath has been writing about it for 30 years, 40 years. So, agrarian crisis has always been there, but climate change has exacerbated it a lot. Uh, things about the agrarian crisis include farmers not getting a fair price. The input costs have risen because of the inflation. The production costs have gone up. Petrol has become expensive. Secondly, there's not enough credit systems in rural areas. The rural banks, the district cooperative banks uh, are in shambles. They don't have the ability to give out crop loans. And because of the lack of credit systems, farmers are forced to sort of approach private money lenders who charge exorbitant interest rates, which range from 4% to 10% per month.
I read 60% in one of your
So even a
articles.
supposedly yeah. So it can range from 4% to 12% or 10% per month, which means they are paying 48% to 96%,
Per
and
annum, yeah.
sometimes even more, just in interest. So the principal amount stays where it is, and even so it is, and they end up paying that interest for years to come. And so even a supposedly manageable amount ends up uh, becoming an albatross around their neck. So it's a so that's a there's a combination of factors that leads to this agrarian crisis, and climate change, of course, has worsened it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are some schemes surrounding microfinance, and I don't know how much it's being applied to the agrarian crisis or the farmers. But yeah, I mean, climate change, especially in Vidharbha, which sees some severe temperatures in the summer, and I know that that part of the country has also faced severe drought in the past few years. So um, yeah, it's a very very tough spot to be in.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's Vidarbha and Marathwada. Both regions have seen thousands of farm suicides every year since for the last 20 years now.
mm, yeah, Parth, another aspect of your writing that I found was with technology and how technology has impacted rural India. And one of the things that I note in your article with Wired is about Manipur, and we all know what's going on in Manipur. Funny enough, some of the journalists are busy flying to Israel when they are not flying to Manipur to cover, so many deaths, so many people displaced, clashes going on day in and day out, murders, rapes, and all of that. Um, the government imposes an internet blackout in Manipur when violence begins, and nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about what's going on in Manipur, that is. So, you come from a family of journalists and media personalities. I mean, I'm sure you talk to your dad about it quite a bit. And how do you think the press freedom has changed from, let's say, the mid 90s to now? And what have been some of your learnings in the process?
Well, so regarding Manipur, I remember I was sitting at home in my room and watching uh, watching a movie or something like that. And my father came to my room and he was like, "Why aren't you going to Manipur?" I said, "Somebody should commission a story. I can't just randomly land up in a state that's in the state of civil war." So he said, "Why not?" I said, so I didn't have an answer to that. I was like, yeah, I mean, I could go. So he said, I mean, this is a huge story. You should cover it. You should go and cover it. So in my head, I was like, if Manipur people in Northeast are covering, then there are journalists from Delhi who have gone because it's closer. Who's going to send someone from Bombay to Manipur? So I shot an email to Wired and I asked Peter Guest, who's a fabulous editor, uh, told him the story idea. There's an internet shutdown, so there was a technology connection there. So I pitched a story, and he said, "Yeah, sure, you should go." So the only reason I could go to Vedipur because my father sort of planted that seed in my head that. So he basically said that even if nobody commissions the story, you should just still go, spend your money and go because it's a story that you should cover. Uh, I don't know many parents would encourage their kids to go to a place where there's a civil war going on.
Yeah, I
But
mean, he has
that
seen Shiv
was
Sena, Chota
that was his.
Shakil. I'm sure he's made of nothing but titanium.
Yeah, so I was like, yes, that's a good idea. So it hadn't struck me. So I went to Manipur only because he planted that seed in my head. Then I went to Manipur. I and you know the only I think people started talking about it only after that video came out of two women who was raped and molested, and that video came out, and then uh, people realized how horrific the magnetic situation in Manipur. Uh, and that was a 3-month-old video, and the only reason that video hadn't come out, and we hadn't heard of the magnitude of the crisis in Manipur, is because of the internet shutdown. So that was my idea, to go back to go to Manipur and then basically write about what happened in the dark. Uh, so it was an experience. It was obviously not an easy place to report from. Remember reporting there. There was gunshot. I could hear gunshots firing from behind. It was that kind of an experience. So also incredibly heartbreaking and difficult interviews where you had to meet people and speak about some of the most gruesome things that they've had to live through. And I think in the last 10 years, to come to your question about press freedom, I have absolutely no doubt that the press freedom in the last 10 years have worsened. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Uh, I don't think it was great in India. There were always problems with press freedom. You will find examples from the past where journalists were targeted and threatened and intimidated and jailed. But the consistency, the fear with which uh, this government has operated in the last 8-9 years, especially in the last 5-6 years, is chilling. I mean, raiding journalists left, right, and center, targeting young journalists, targeting senior editors. Charging journalists with terrorism charges. Yeah,
Yeah, the
for God's sake.
NewsClick episode, right? The NewsClick episode. The Delhi
It's
police raids NewsClick and
it's
seize
it's ridiculous.
laptops, phones, uh, detains two journalists. I mean,
I mean,
what's going on?
NewsClicks, the Kapan, for example, the guy is on his way to cover a story, and you put him in jail for 2 years, 2.5 years, only because he was on his way. He's a Muslim man, Muslim journalist on his way to cover a rape in your state. So you just lock him up for 2 years. It's not a joke. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the state of journalism today is at its lowest ebb. Uh, the mainstream media has become so pliant; it is basically an extension of Modi's IT cell. Um, you, People talk about Modi's ability to set the narrative and so on and so forth. I feel even anybody would be able to set a narrative if he had a battery of 500 TV anchors with millions of followers who are willing to amplify anything that he says. So it's not when we analyze Modi's ability to set an agenda, when we analyze Modi's quote unquote communication skills, we should remember that he has more resources than any other leader in the country. Uh, so when I watch TV, I mean, I don't watch. I've stopped watching TV for a really long time. But like other tragedies in the world, I end up hearing about it. So when uh, when I get to know what's happening on TV, people are tweeting about it. I follow News Laundry. Yeah, so when I watch some of these TV anchors claiming to be journalists, I feel extremely embarrassed that they are supposed to be in the same profession that I am. Uh, they've caused irrevocable damage to India's democracy. What we have seen in India today is, uh, to use Noam Chomsky's line, we've seen manufacturing public opinion en masse. And basically what through the media, what we have told our common people, electorate citizens, is that if you think of anybody other than Narendra Modi as an option, you're either an idiot or an anti-national. And that sort of brainwashing has led to where we are today. I mean, it's probably the most challenging time to be a journalist.
Do you think it would have been the case if, the rise of Modi and his, rise to power was not coinciding with social media and rise of WhatsApp and all of that in India?
Social media has certainly uh, exacerbated their clout. I mean, they've used it to their advantage. There's no doubt about that. But again, when you want to use social media to your advantage, you have to have the resources to be able to do that. No doubt there's a lot of skill and hard work in place, but we have to remember that BJP has more resources today than the next 5 or 6 political parties combined. Uh, if you read this recent report in Washington Post, they had used 100, 150,000 people just for social media in Karnataka elections. You need money for that kind of stuff. Uh, but I feel if the social media hadn't been there, they would have done some. They would have used something else. They would have used some other tools. Uh, it's tough to say exactly how things would have panned out. But even without social media, they have the battery of news anchors at their disposal who are willing to amplify everything that they do. So I don't think it would have made a lot of difference. I mean, it would have made a bit of difference, but they still have your 9 p.m. prime time people batting for you. So I don't think this. I don't think his clout would have been any different. He would have still been as uh, popular and effective, perhaps. At least that's my sense.
Yeah, I mean, pre 2014, the UPA 2 government was still in power, lots of scams, 2G scam, Commonwealth Games, and all of that. Now, BJP is this party that did not win majority in the previous 2 elections. India Shining was its big hope, but did not quite make it in 2004. How did they actually go about this? Like, where did they start? I mean, I'm still amazed at how they could get an Arnab Goswami to bat for them. It's quite remarkable how they all started, and it has spiraled to unbelievable proportions now.
There's no shortage of opportunists, to be honest. I mean, when everyone wants to be close to power, so that in the hope that some of their power rubs off on you. 2014, I wasn't surprised they were voted. The UPA 2 was voted out. There was huge anti-incumbency. Uh, the Anna Hazare movement was handled very badly. I mean, people today talk about that being RSS sponsored or whatever. And even if, I mean, I don't know if it was or if it wasn't, but even if it was, the Congress didn't handle that very well. I mean, they could have they let it fester. At least that's my view. But so there was a lot of anti-incumbency in 2014 that 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 they capitalized, that the BJP capitalized. They had a fairly sort of a smart campaign, I would say, which sort of had everything for everyone. Uh, they talked about better governance for the middle class. They spoke about enforcing the Swaminathan Commission that would get the farmers on their side. They spoke about uh, a lot of things. And while they did all of that, there was a clear-cut message that you would see an authoritarian sort of a right-wing shift in India's democracy. A lot of people, I thought, during that time, underestimated Narendra Modi's ability to become a dictator. Uh, a lot of the columnists, I remember, saying that he deserves a chance and things like that. He won't be as bad. He won't be able to do what he did in Gujarat. Uh, I don't know where that came from, but I was also a young journalist. I was about 22, 23 at the time. And but I remember wondering where this confidence is coming from because he had you exactly knew what he had done in Gujarat. So if he had done that in Gujarat, why couldn't he do it in India? Why couldn't he replicate that model? He's done that exactly today when you look back. 2019 was I thought the bigger sort of a PR campaign that made them successful. There was Balakot, of course, that drove up the sentiment. There was uh, they had the baggage. Inflation was at an all-time high. I think unemployment was at an all-time high. Yet they managed to win because of Hindutva, because of this, Balakot. The sentiment was running high. there was a lot of sort of welfare politics that they had promised, which seemed to be striking a chord. And of course, the media. I mean, the media constantly hammered in this narrative that if not Modi, then who? You know, uh, and that sort of played a huge role. I feel. Uh, Not that I'm a fan of Rahul Gandhi, but I feel there's a huge media campaign that has gone behind defaming his image. Uh, I, I, I absolutely feel that if the media had at least done their job with 50% honesty, I don't think it would have been as easy for the BJP to just win election after election.
Hmm. Interesting. We are closing in on the elections. Do you see something similar to 2004 India shining happening this time around, or is it going to be
It's
Modi all
tough
the
to
way?
say. It's tough to say. It's still a long way
I mean,
away.
that
As
was
they
an
say,
unexpected election. I have to
a
be
week.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, after Balakot, it was quite clear who's going to win. Yet, even before Balakot, I thought the BJP was ahead, but after Balakot, it was just over. This time, I mean, it's too early to say. Let's see what happens in these state elections. Uh, it's important to note that the BJP had lost these state elections in 2018 as well, and then they ended up sweeping the same states that they had lost in Lok Sabha elections. So you never know. As they say, a week is a long time in politics. So it will depend on a lot of factors. It will depend on how the opposition alliance sort of gels together. How if they're able to put up a coherent sort of opposition front, and they're able to sort of campaign on on a common ground. Because right now it seems a little iffy because Rahul Gandhi is attacking Adani, Mahua Moitra is attacking Adani, but Sharad Pawar is cutting a ribbon with Adani. So, it sends sort of a confusing signals to the electorate when that sort of things happen. I feel they need to get their act together and soon. Having said that, I feel the two states of Maharashtra and Bihar would be incredibly challenging for the BJP. I don't think they get the success that they got in the past two general elections in these two states. The Congress's biggest challenge is to recover some ground in states like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, states where they are in direct competition with each other, Karnataka, because South India is fairly covered as far as the opposition is concerned, but it's the central and north that poses a lot of challenge to the opposition alliance. Gujarat is gone. There is no way they are going to get anything in from Gujarat. There's no way they're going to get anything from UP. I think these two states, the BJP has a very strong hold, and I think they'll continue to replicate their results over the past 10 years in 2024. But states like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Chhattisgarh, these are the places where they'll have to sort of recover some lost ground to at least dent the BJP's chances. बाकी भगवान मालिक देखते हैं.
Yeah, Parth, you mentioned that you don't follow the news, but
I
before we
follow the news.
uh-huh.
I don't follow the news channels.
channels.
I follow
Yeah,
the
yeah.
news.
I'm sorry. That's what I meant. You don't follow the news channels. But before we end this podcast, I think it'll be lovely if you could share maybe 3 or 4 news outlets. It need not be print. It need not be television. It could be YouTube. It could be websites that uh, can be relied upon as a source. Again, this is not an endorsement, but
Yeah.
I can
No,
speak.
I'm happy.
I can tell mine. I definitely do follow Deshbhakt channel on YouTube, print, now Pari as well, and yeah, I think these are some of the names that I can think of. For News Laundry, of course, I think we both spoke about it, right? I also follow Meghnad. I happen to do an episode with him
Yeah.
for my podcast, so I also follow his commentary, and I think that's pretty good as well. Would love to know what are yours.
Well, I feel the days, as you briefly mentioned earlier, the days where you could get everything under one roof, they're gone. So you have to sort of get different sorts of news stories from different places. So if you want ground reports from rural India, I definitely say Pari. If you want, media critique, again, ground reports, news laundry. If you make media commentary, media critique, ground reports, stories around media, news laundry is doing, I feel, really
Regarding
good
the
work.
dosage of news laundry, do you think they go a little overboard?
Dosage as in what dosage?
Dosage of criticism.
Well, I think the mainstream media deserves every criticism that comes their way. So, as much as you can criticize the mainstream media, I think it's less. So, I mean, to each their own.
Yeah.
I frankly have very deep-rooted hatred for the mainstream media and what they've done, especially because the damage they've done to the profession and to India's democracy. So it also comes from this. वो अंदर से गुस्सा आता है मुझे. Uh, so so that's there, and of course, I mean, fake news is such a huge epidemic in India right now that alt news is a must. I think what Pratik and Zubair have done with alt news is just, I think it's a landmark milestone achievement that is absolutely that is must follow. And besides that, there are a lot of, I mean, South India often gets neglected. So News Minute has done some excellent coverage of South India.
Yeah, Dhanya and I forget her partner's name. Yeah, they are doing a great job. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they've done a great job of reporting from South. Scroll, I like their ground reports. Scroll was actually one of the very few publications that was reporting from Manipur before, throughout the crisis. So I like Scroll as well. And besides that, I think there are a lot of independent journalists now who are writing for multiple publications and are doing good work. So it's it's always good to sort of follow independent journalists who might be reporting for international publications, Indian publications. And I also feel the international media has begun to cover India. Not begun to, I mean, they've always covered India, but they've covered it a lot better because Indian journalists are now part of international publications, and they're, because generally there is this rising interest in South Asia and India. They're also looking at India more keenly and engaging with Indian freelancers, Indian journalists, which has only bolstered their coverage.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think some really honorable mentions. I think scroll.in is something I missed as well. News Minute as well. So yeah, definitely great sources.
Also, really like watching Karan Thapa's interviews on The Wire. So if that is something your listeners might be interested in, then
yeah, absolutely.
Karan, very, very sharp, analytical interviews.
Yeah,
masterclass, absolutely. in taking an interview, asking sort of follow-up questions, crossing the guest. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was, I think Madhu Trehan had, I don't think it was News Laundry, but she had something else, I think, before News Laundry. Or was it News Laundry? I don't quite remember. But yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't remember watching her stuff a lot, but I've followed News Laundry closely, I think. But the reporters, they have some really good reporters. And they've done some great work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Parth, what an engaging conversation. Loved your insights about rural India, climate change, the agrarian crisis, and some common love related to sport, and also about the state of journalism that it is now, and your thoughts on it. And you were really open and blunt about what you feel about it, and rightly so. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Had a good time. Thank you so much.